Hey everybody, it is Sunday, November 21st, 2021 at approximately 11:43 p.m., 11:46 p.m. It's time for Psalm 4 night prayer. When I call, answer me, O God of justice. From anguish you released me, have mercy and hear me. You rebels, how long will your hearts be closed? Will you love what is futile and seek what is false? It is the Lord who grants favors to those who are merciful. The Lord hears me whenever I call. Tremble, do not sin. Ponder on your bed and be still. Make justice your sacrifice and trust in the Lord. What can bring us happiness, many say? Lift up the light of your face on us, O Lord. You have put into my heart a greater joy than they have from abundance of corn and new wine. I will lie down in peace, and sleep comes at once. For you alone, Lord, make me dwell in safety. Glory to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and will be forever. Amen. Now, now it's kind of neat because I have my phone like this. When I look into the camera, it's pretty much like I'm looking at you. If I want to look up at you, I have to look right there. But it's better than when it's tilted to the side because it looks like I'm kind of looking at off in the distance. In my earlier video, my Prayerless Prayers video, I talked about Bob Moad, increasing human effectiveness. And so after that, I thought, I haven't thought of, and it's funny because then I started thinking of, I can't do it because it's on there and the iPad's charging up right now. There are some sayings like by Bob Moad that I found on this website. And as I began to read them, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that. Yep. And he passed away. Increasing human effectiveness was a business, like a man, like, you know what I mean, like seminars that they send management people to. That my best friend Bob encountered while he worked for Pacific Telesis when it existed. I don't know what it is now. I don't know like what it's called down there. But Pacific Bell used to be the phone company for the entire state. And it was pretty neat. Anyway, so it in its heyday, it was in the early 80s. But anyway, the course is still used today. And I was very surprised to learn that. And that's kind of cool. And I'll be honest with you, okay? Some of it is like pointy-haired boss stuff. Like when you read it, you're like, oh God, I know what this is. But there's still stuff, there's a lot of optimism in the course. For example, like Bob Moad was a fan of saying that most of our limitations are self-imposed. Until somebody ran a 4-minute mile, nobody knew that, nobody thought it was possible. And then once he had done it, the guy that had done it, whatever, I forget the guy's name. I want to say Carl Lewis, but I don't think it's not that. It's not that. I don't think, is it? Or maybe he used a different example. But it was running a distance. Nobody thought it was possible. And then after that, everybody started duplicating his feat. And so a lot of times when employees hear these things, they're like, but they really are important to keep in mind. And when I was young, I'm still young, but you know what I mean. When I was younger, I'm going to be like 65, and so I'm still young, but it's important. Bob exposed me to a lot of positive thinking, like Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, and things like increasing human effectiveness. IHE is actually the short name for it. And they still, I thought the same thing, and I still think the same thing about that. But they do have a place in my life, and I don't often think of them as such. But if you look at my life, the way I live my life, they're incorporated in there. You know what I mean? Because sometimes, like, hokey or not, sometimes it's the way it is. I do a lot of things that are hokey that my homeless friends would think, like, you know what I mean? Like, whatever, but they're important. Like, for example, talking about when I say the Lord, you know what I mean? That sounds, how much more hokey can you get than talk about God and be saying the Lord? The Lord said, the Lord did, but it's the real deal, you know what I mean? So So, it's a part of my life. I've just reminded myself of my ex Dustin right now, because my ex has videos on YouTube. He has 2 videos. He was going to start video logging, and he got 2 videos in, and and life happens and stuff like that. But I'm glad that they're there, because I can always go back and look at them. I wish I could refer you to them. One of them is called, I think his YouTube username is Music Saved My Life, I think is what it is. For those of you that don't know, my ex Dustin, a lot of people don't like to tell you how someone died. They like this. I can't stand that. I'd like to know, did they commit suicide? Did they, what I mean? Did they get shot? Did they get, did they just die of old age? Did they cancer? Because that's important. You know what I mean? That's important to kind of like get an insight, especially if it was an untimely death. I feel like, and Dustin committed suicide. And I mention this, so I mention this often, and I don't think he would object to that. At least not the Dustin that exists now. And I don't know. But then if he did care, I would say, Dustin, you were the type of person that wouldn't care if the other person cared. So there you go. There you go. But it's always, I don't talk any shit about him. It's never to talk shit about him. It's he's a special guy to me. And I got to tell you, his area code 913. It's not infrequent. Sometimes twice a day, where my eyes fall on the clock at 9:13, which is pretty amazing. My toenail is uneven right there, and it's bothering me. I'm not going to look at it. So, one thing I want to mention about that. How did he commit suicide? I don't know why the Lord wants me to talk about that anymore, but the way he committed suicide, Dustin was, in hindsight's 2020, he became a nurse. Dustin is a drug addict like me. And of course when we first met, we were doing meth. You know what I mean? And, but he completed nursing school and things were going good. He had about a 3-year run of sobriety, and then he started to relapse. And then before he committed suicide, he started injecting drugs. When I told him that I first injected drugs, he had not started yet, and he would not talk to me. He's like, oh, you know what I mean? And then he finally told me that he started injecting drugs too. But anyway, so he ended up committing suicide. Of course, I don't know what was going through his head. I have an idea. He had several failed relationships. Things were getting worse. He was getting arrested and stuff like that. Things were just going downhill. His quality of life was declining. And that was too much for him to handle. See, I'm not saying I'm better or anything like that. I would never say that, especially with that guy that I love so much, But like, I can roll with the punches a lot. It's funny, kind of a lot easier than I thought. You know what I mean? But he also had different circumstances a little bit. You know what I mean? That make things a little bit different. But anyway, so I'll tell you what happened. So he became a nurse, and then he started having drug addiction and nursing is just not a really good profession for one reason, really. Okay, it's not because drug addicts can't do it, but it's because like there's drug testing at jobs and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Yeah, you can steal drugs too, like there, but maybe for that as well, because you know what I mean. If you're a drug addict and you can't resist stealing patient meds, that's bad too. You're gonna get fired eventually. Not long is gonna go by before they figure that out. But I don't believe that he did that. If he did that, he never told me about that. But I think it was the and then in scheduling and stuff like that. I remember when I was back in Massachusetts, I was partying one night with one of the head nurses at a hospital in Boston. I couldn't believe, and I could tell he wasn't lying either. You know what I mean? Because a lot of times speakers like just make shit up. I could tell that was like his real job, and I was like, wow, damn, he can hold it together. And you could tell he was fine the entire time. He was absolutely all right. He could have worked right then, and been on top of it. Anyway, so he took an overdose of Prozac, and I forget the other antidepressant. He took a whole bottle of each. And that'll cause, I mean, I can't believe he decided to do that to go. I would not be a way that I would choose. You start to have seizures within, I don't know, half an hour, 45 minutes. And then, you know what I mean? It just goes downhill from there. But you know what I mean? I don't know. I mean, I don't want to be, if I die, like, I mean, most people are going to be in death rows, I guess. When you die, you start to do, you know what I mean? Body jerks and shit, you know, in most cases. But, wow, I can't, you know what I mean? Like, but it's weird because when the Lord wants you to do shit, you overcome the fear, really. And I guess that's what the Lord had called him to do. We don't, you know, it's not common to hear people say the opposite, but my experience of God is very, very different. And it's that I can see the hand of God in everything. And if it, you know what I mean? Everything that happens is the Lord's will, you know, not for the reasons we think necessarily. You know what I mean? We're just trying to paste on a rationale a lot of times to things that sometimes make sense. And it may be part of the reason, but almost always it's not limited to the reasons that we can see and understand. So, and that's what happened with him, you know. I have tried to commit suicide a few times in my life, and there's always been a resistant, you know what I mean, like a fear, I guess, and that's why I wasn't successful, you know. And thank God. And I got to tell you something, because it's ego, but it is true. It's been a very long time. I was like quite a young man then, in my early 20s. But nonetheless, and now I realize that no, if the Lord had wanted me to do it, that, you know what I mean? At least enough fear would have been wiped away to where I would have been successful. That's, you know what I mean? That's because I can't imagine, you know what I mean? And I think that up until that moment, he probably couldn't have imagined doing that to himself, because that's not what the Lord wanted to have happen. So, you know, it's a scary thing. I mean, because, you know, I mean, like, I just want people to realize, though, that I think that the way that we think of God, and it's important to think of God, of course, and focus on the good. You know what I mean? I do. I don't focus on the negative, but everything is a part of my picture of the Lord, you know? And that also, I mean, the fact that I talk to God directly, as honestly, I'm just being honest, is what makes me focus on the Lord. You know what I mean? Like that, good or bad or whatever. The fact, you know what I mean? When someone's right in your face and you can't deny it, like, you know what I mean? You're going to the good or bad or what. But I think, though, that the way we talk about God in churches doesn't account for a lot. I've said this before many times. Doesn't account for a lot of other stuff that people don't get addressed in church. And so they've, you know, a lot of significant stuff. You know? For example, like, I mean, it's not limited to that. I can't believe God just gave me this example. I'm like, okay, well, you know, choose something more severe, but we'll go with this one. On a Facebook post, I talked about, I have a prayer routine. For those of you that don't know, I was praying the Angelus 3 times a day, 9, noon, and 6. And not that long ago, one of those hours became a prayerless prayers hour, because I've been ill, and because things have come up, I have not been able to pray for people every day like I was. And I was like, I would need to address that. Well, one thing to do is substitute one of those prayer hours for the Angelus, or for the for prayerless prayers. So that's what I did. And anyway, so having that discipline, if you're not a monk, where for example, you know exactly what you're going to be doing just before prayerless prayers, and it's not going to be sex. At least not on the schedule. And I mean, anyway, is that I was in the middle of having sex on just before a 6 p.m. Angelus. What do you do when those things happen? Because when you're not among those things, whether it be that, whether it be a phone call that you're on, whether it be, and I'm kind of glad it wasn't a phone. I mean, it's kind of funny because I haven't had anything like that happen yet. That's kind of miraculous in a way. I've been out. I've been having sex a few times during the Angelus. I've been out and having sex and did it. And that's not because, whoa, you're a great guy, because it's because of the Lord. I'm telling you right now. But anyway, so I wrote this post on Facebook. If you want to search it, just search my post for blowjob, because I got more specific about it during the post. And I talk in the post, though, about like, okay, well, the experience of this, the hour coming up, and how I handled it, and the dialogue I had with God about it, beforehand, and what the options were and what we were going to go with. And of course I said, like, well, whatever of those that you showed me, that, like, pick one and we'll do that and be fine. But these are things that, you know what I mean? For example, like, I think a lot of people, if they had a prayer routine and something like that happened to interrupt it, that would kind of be the beginning of the end a little bit, because they don't have a paradigm. Now, I'm not saying people wouldn't come up with a paradigm, but I'm telling you, it doesn't take, there's so much unaddressed territory in church a lot of times, that when those factors in life show up, and sometimes they do more for other people than others, that really is the destabilizing. It reminds me of the parable of Jesus, the seeds that fell on rocky ground, the seeds that, were in the soil. And I'm really embarrassed right now because I can't remember the specifics of the rest of the parable, but the point still stands. What you're going to do. But it really, honestly, isn't even that. It's what the Lord is going to make you do anyway. But there is more of a chance, the more of the, the seed in the more root you have, the better off you are. You know what I mean? God tends to go with, the things that we say, like, every time you smoke a cigarette increases your chances of smoking another cigarette. And that's true. It begets. You know what I mean? Like, the chances go up. You may not, but the odds are more likely. Right? When we see trends and we see patterns, they can change, but they will tend to go, especially the longer the pattern goes on, the more likely it is to continue, and that as such, right? That's because God works. God obviously, you know what I mean? So it's fair to say that God tends to work certain ways most of the time with certain things, right? So there you go. And those things can destabilize people. So from starting things that are really well-intended and doing and great. So I try to focus on talking about some of those things that people don't want to talk about, either because it's embarrassing or because they may be ostracized. Now, I don't necessarily think it's for that reason, but I'm experiencing a lot of ostracization right now. I have absolutely, it's like, whoa. It's now I'm used to it, but it's still like, wow, this is really weird, But it's good in a way, because if I had maybe a really strong social network when I started doing this ministry, I would be limited by the pressure I felt for not wanting to lose, it. I'm not saying I had none, but like, it was very, very minimal. And there wasn't I wasn't principally guided by the worry of disappointing those people or upsetting the balance in any way. So that's been good for me, honestly. And I've gotten to the point, like, where if it was an either or thing, I will take the ostracization, because I do fine with it. You know what I mean? With the Lord, I feel fine. I got all the friends in the world, for the most part. I'm not saying I don't feel sometimes a need for it to have human social, but I don't feel, I'm not trying to kill myself or anything like that. You know what I mean? Not even close. And I feel, it's weird because I don't feel like I don't have friends, honestly, which is really weird. And I've been in this situation before with that lack of socials, and did not feel like that at all. Like, I felt, like nobody likes me, and I don't feel like that anymore at all. God keeps me busy and keeps me company. And I'm not I know that the words can't do it justice to the experience. Let me tell you that. So anyway, that's 20 minutes and 15 seconds exactly. Let's go ahead and stop the video. And I'm going to try to go to bed. I don't know how successful I'm going to be right now because you see, I'm kind of like, the weird thing is this, is if I had to go to the grocery store right now, if someone like, I'd be like, oh, I can't do that. But I can sit here with a level of animation and talk to you. That seems like I would be fine to pretty much do anything, but I don't have the energy to do that. Like, even if I had to brush my teeth right now again, I'd be like, I could do it, but like the thought would come to my mind. You know what I mean? Like where you're like, oh, that's work. You know what I mean? Where usually you don't have that, you're like, all right, I got to go do that. Boom. And I remember when I first moved in here, it was like that. You know what I mean? But now it's like everything is, one day, you go over to Walgreens, you want to see a lot of old people. I don't know why you want to do that, but there are reasons. I have several reasons to want to see older people, older folks. You go to a Walgreens, you'll see a lot of old people in there because of the pharmacy, right? And a lot of times older people move slower, One time I saw this woman, I don't honestly, you know what? Now I don't remember what time it was because you see it all the time anyway. So I can't remember a specific time right now. But take a long time to walk, probably I'd say out of the store to the car, across the parking lot, like a really long time. Or even you see it, right? And I was just like, stopped for a minute and just thought to myself, and I do this occasionally, periodically, because you see it a lot and you have to kind of take it into account and this is why, don't get annoyed with old people taking too long. Now, sometimes, you know what? You will. Try your best not to show it. Really, because sometimes you know what I mean? It's nothing personal and you just come on. But don't get annoyed at them for being slow. I never get visibly annoyed at old people for being slow because usually when I experience it, I don't experience it as a personal thing. It's just you know what I mean? Like that. And so I never feel spite toward the older person at all because you know what I mean? It's out of their control. Anyway, the point being this. Put yourself in their world there. That person was a young person like me or you, or maybe you're not an old person, or maybe you're not a young person and you're an old person, and you're thinking when you were younger, or you're an older person that is blessed with, you know what I mean, good mobility, But you probably notice, even if that's true, you probably notice decreased mobility from your youth, because Vladimir Horowitz, the pianist, man, he was on fire even when he was older. I remember watching him play octaves in the A-flat Polonaise, Chopin, and his hand was a blur. Left hand was a blur. And he still talked about he can't play like he used to. And it wasn't false modesty, especially when you are somebody like that. You are paying attention, you know what I mean? You are intimately aware of all of your body movements. Well, anyway, so one day, I remember somebody caught me. Somebody caught my attention, an older person caught my attention doing that, taking a real long time to walk somewhere. And I thought, just do this one time. And the Lord let me do it. Because honestly, I thought, on most days I try to do it, I'd only make it part of the way. But I walked from Walgreens across the way, all the way to my front door over here, that same way, with a limp and really slow. And it was, I'll tell you something right now, you have to get into a different mindset or you'll drive yourself crazy. If your body does that to you, you can't, you know what I mean? And there are people like that, and they throw, you know what I mean? They throw shit and get mad and blow up all the time because they can't handle, you know what I mean? It's maddening to have a mind that's come on, move, 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 and the body is not letting you move. And I did it. I walked all the way from Walgreens at a pace that was one. Like someone in a walker that's going really slow. One. and just to kind of, you know what I mean, just for solidarity in a way. So I probably looked maybe a little strange, I don't know, but I wasn't worried about that. I wasn't paying attention to that. I did have to do one thing that the older person probably couldn't have done, which is there's a ledge about that high. I had to hop down to continue to go on over to my place. I tell you the truth, if I wanted the real experience, I should have went out to the sidewalk, came all the way over, and came down, which is what he or she would have had to do. You know? You got to relax. You got to relax if you got to do that. And those of us around them need to be patient about that. You know? Because young people, we may break a leg, something like that, give you a taste of that. But, you know, actually, in fact, I got to tell you something. When it's an old person holding up the line, that's my favorite person to hold up the line, because I know that they can't help it. And, you know, it's not obvious that they have like slow work habits like those people at Walgreens, that you can see they could be a little bit more efficient. Okay. I mean, like, so, because then I just, you know what I mean? I have no problem just relax most of the time. You know what I mean? Unless there's an extreme emergency, and most of the time I get in the mindset of, all right, you know what I mean? Chill, because, and even though, you know, yeah, I love older people a lot. I really do. Well, anyway. Anyway, I love you all. Peace and good night.